Good evening, Shawnee 8th graders. Our flipped video this evening is on the TP-CASTT strategy for poetry analysis. Tomorrow we're going to further analyze the Robert Frost poem in Chapter 5 of The Outsiders. And in order to effectively analyze the poem, we're going to use a strategy called TP-CASTT. So your task tonight is to first have your spiral flipped notebook open. Make sure in the upper right hand corner you put today's date and write the title of the lesson, TP-CASTT. And take notes as you follow along the video. And you will write a summary that details what TP-CASTT is, why we use the method, and the steps involved. In addition, you're going to write one question you can use to quiz your classmates at the beginning of class tomorrow on one element of TP-CASTT you pick. So what is TP-CASTT? It's a strategy that's used to analyze a poem by identifying its various parts. First, discussing the title. Next, paraphrasing the poem, putting it in your own words. Examining the connotation within the poem. The attitude of the poet or the speaker. Looking for shifts in point of view or in tone. Looking once again at the title with a different perspective. And then finally, determining a theme. So why do we use the TP-CASTT method? Well, it's simply a helpful analytical process that helps you better understand the author's craft, their craft of poetry, and to better understand what they're trying to communicate to the reader. Simply put, by using the strategy, you're going to better understand the poem. Please remember that analysis, or to analyze, is to separate something into parts in order to examine it more carefully. And that's really what we do. We pick it apart into a variety of parts, and then we put it all back together and try to determine its larger meaning. What is the process of TP-CASTT? Well, when we use the TP-CASTT method to analyze any poem, the very first thing we're going to do in order to record our findings in an effective, efficient way is to use a graphic organizer. And tomorrow I will be giving you a graphic organizer that will detail in a spot for each of these steps. And the very first step that we use before we ever read anything in the poem is to ponder what the title means to us on the surface. The title can be key to possible meaning or understanding, and we as good readers should always make predictions about what something we're going to read might be about. Be aware, however, that sometimes titles can be misleading. So this is an initial evaluation, and it may change later on. In the next step, we translate the poem into our own words. In other words, we paraphrase. Think about the poem, think about the plot of the poem. Restate it in your own words. Focus on one unit of the poem at a time. And by a unit, I don't mean line, I mean a sentence or where you'll find periods. Or you may look for meaning in a stanza if it's a short one. But all in all, you're basically putting this poem in your own words, and you're chunking it so that it's a more manageable paraphrase. Probably the most daunting task within TP-CASTT is connotation. And this is where the student contemplates or thinks about the poem for meaning beyond what is literal or what's in black and white. And what is necessary here is that you examine all the various poetic devices. You focus clearly on how those devices contribute to the meaning or the effect of the poem, what the author's or poet's intent was. And here you think about a variety of aspects. You think about figurative language, symbolism, word choice. Another word for that is diction, point of view, sound devices. The important part of this step is to remember that um, thinking about how all these elements combine to create meaning. And that's really what you're looking for here. And here you can see some of those bullets, some of those items that you look for. Again, figurative language, symbolism, word choice, point of view, sound devices. The A in TP-CASTT stands for attitude, and this step requires that we observe both the speaker's and the poet's attitude toward his or her subject. And another word for attitude, as you know, is tone. And this is where we explore multiple attitudes that may be present in the poem. So a variety of points of view or a variety of feelings that the poet has toward the subject. We also look at word choice, we look at images, we look at details, and all these things might suggest what the speaker's attitude is toward the subject. And of course, as mentioned before, all of this combines to help us understand the poem better. Next, we have shift. And a shift is a change. And it's important to take note of any kind of changes or shifts in the speaker's attitude or even in the speaker, him or herself. And keep in mind that the tone is also another word for attitude. So we're looking for any changes. Rarely does a poet begin and end a poetic experience in the same place. Their understanding of an experience is a very gradual realization, and the poem is a reflection of that understanding or realization. It's kind of like that aha moment when you get it. Well, one way to help you arrive at the understanding is to trace the changing feelings of the speaker from beginning of the poem to the end, paying closest attention to the conclusion, because that's where that aha moment comes. I will be giving you a key to some of the things you'll need to keep in mind when you watch for a shift in a poem. No, this is not incorrect. We are once again looking at the title. Initially, we looked at the title when we had not yet read the poem. Now that we've read the poem and done some analysis, we're going to look at the title again. We're going to examine it again, and this time try to make some more interpretations, meaning we're going to dig a little deeper. We're going to look at it, interpret it, and based on what we've learned from all the previous steps, we may have a different perspective on the meaning of the poem. And it's possible that the prediction you made in the beginning is quite different now. Our last step is to determine what the poet is saying about life or a situation in life, and this of course is the theme. And in identifying the theme, you're going to recognize some sort of human experience. You're going to determine what the poet is saying about some aspect of life. What's the message here? Why did this poet bother to write this piece of literature? I'm also going to give you a handout or a key for helping you break down the theme in a very methodical way to help you with this, because this is one of the most difficult aspects of the TP-CASTT process. So that's an overview of our TP-CASTT analytical process that we'll use for poetry study this year. And since we're going to be looking at a poem that we have become familiar with tomorrow, this is a perfect opportunity for you to brush up on TP-CASTT. So again, tonight your task is to write a summary on your whisk that details what a TP-CASTT is, why we use the method, and the various steps involved. And make sure that you also write one question that you can use to quiz your classmates at the beginning of class tomorrow on one element of TP-CASTT. And that's it for tonight's Language Arts Flipped video. Have a good evening.